there is a podcast called the House of Hammer podcast, and Smokey, Kev and Ben are working their way through every movie ever produced by Hammer Studios.
All of these worthy noirs are great, but yeah, I have been asking for 2 years, but where's Frankenstein?
I'll blow down your house, and then I'm gonna eat ya. Bring you to...
In the year 1860, I, Baron Frankenstein, was sentenced to death on the guillotine.
It's an encyclopedic look into the history of Hammer films.
It's lovely to be back home. Don't get me wrong, European villas are nice and all that, but there's only so many times you can see your co-hosts in flip-flops and Speedos before you're longing for your gothic abode again. Ah, hello Ingrid. Have you missed us? Well, don't worry, we're back now. And of course, so are all of you. Well, let me get the door open and welcome you all inside to the House of Hammer. Right, let's crack on, shall we? For this episode, it's sequel time. Of course, we've had sequels before. Dick Barton, PC-49, and The Lions all had follow-ups. We've also had 2 of the Quatermass movies. So we have dipped our toes in the puddle of horror sequels already as well. But 1958's Revenge of Frankenstein is our first gothic horror sequel. And yes, I know there will be many more, but we're still viewing this as a landmark event. But Smokey, I hear you cry, how can this be possible? Frankenstein was killed at the end of the first film. He can't come back from the dead. Well, you lot really can get a bit rambunctious when you want to, can't you? And in response, I say, aha! Aha! I say. Did we see him die? Did we, though? Never saw that blade fall on him, did we? And, I'll follow it up with this. Cinema is littered with examples of people getting deaded and getting better. Right, that's it. If you think you can get away with haranguing me, you know what I'll do? Well, I'll just set Ben on you to straighten you out.
The curse of Frankenstein ends with the titular Baron condemned to death and being led to the guillotine to face his fate. True, we never see the blade drop, but the viewer is led to believe that there is no escape for Victor, and the one man that might have helped his case, his laboratory partner, Paul, has turned his back on him and condemned him to death. The viewer leaves that film with the assumption that the Baron has lost his head. But the Revenge of Frankenstein begins with Victor still having his head, albeit being led to the guillotine. But thanks to his trusty manservant Carl having appeared from somewhere, Victor avoids death. He's back from an assumed death. Which leads me to talk more generally about characters coming back from the dead in the movies. Now, there are loads of these, dozens and dozens of examples, so I've created some rules as regards the ones I'm going to focus on, because all of the best fun has rules. Firstly, I'm not talking about the many resurrections of recurring horror franchise villains. So yes, this includes Frankenstein and his monster, as well as Count Dracula and the Wolfman, all of whom, pre-1958, have already come back to life on more than one occasion. I'm also not talking about the more modern horror franchises, so we can forget Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Chucky, Ghostface, that Jeepers Creepers man, Jigsaw, Leatherface, or that house from Amityville Horror, assuming the form of a lamp or a clock or another house. Because all of that comes with the territory of horror films, as it does with superhero films, where comic book rules apply and no one really dies, so I'm not including them either. I'm also not talking about films with the word resurrection in the title. See the Matrix and Alien franchise as examples. I'm not including these, as these characters were regenerated in a way that meant technically they're not the same characters. Sort of. They're rebuilt, clone things, or copies or something. Along these lines, see also Avatar and the Terminator movies, both of which reintroduce characters which are played by the same actors as a previous installment, and they look and sound like the original characters, but they are in fact not the same character. So they haven't come back from the dead, as it were. I'm also not including films where characters die multiple times in the same film as part of the plot, only to reawaken again fully alive. So this rules out things like Groundhog Day, Happy Death Day, or Edge of Tomorrow. In fact, I'm not looking at films where characters die and come back to life in the same film, like, say, Short Circuit 2 or RoboCop. So, Ben, now that you've ruled out all of the above, what are you actually looking at? Well, dear listener, I have chosen 5 examples of film characters that seemingly die, or at least the viewer is led to believe that they have, only for them to be resurrected in a subsequent sequel. Let us start with a particular bone of contention of mine. Joe Dante's beloved 1984 Christmas monster movie Gremlins represents, for me, a high watermark of horror comedy. The small green nasties rampage through a picturesque all-American town. There are plenty of laughs, but also several deaths. One of these occurs when the Kentucky harvester belonging to Murray Futterman, as played by Dick Miller, is commandeered by gremlins and then driven into Murray's house, whilst he and his wife are inside. We don't see the characters again, and thus are led to believe that they have both perished, owing to having taken a tractor to the face and a house to the head. But no! They both survive to pop up in a terrible sequel, to exact revenge on a new batch of gremlins. Now, Star Wars is full of dead characters that simply refuse to embrace the eternal peace of the grave. Obi-Wan Kenobi dies, but then comes back as a floaty force ghost thing, as does Yoda and Darth Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker. Darth Maul doesn't let getting chopped in half stop him from popping back up a few films later. Boba Fett gets eaten by a big hole in the ground, but comes back and gets his own TV series. I could go on. And I'm going to. Because the most remarkable example of the "I thought he was dead" trope is surely the Emperor, aka Darth Sidious. At the end of Return of the Jedi, he's chucked down a big hole, and he explodes. And then, just to seal the deal, the planetoid space station thing he's on, which was home to the aforementioned big hole, also explodes. So he's died twice, at least. But several films later, when the writers have inexplicably painted themselves into a space corner, despite the infinite possibilities of an entire fantasy universe, the Emperor comes back. How? Well, it's never really explained, just that the Force can be, funny like that. Or something. And let's stay in space, but a different bit of space. The Star Trek bit. And it's time to reach for the intergalactic hankies as Spock sacrifices himself in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. In the course of ensuring that the rest of the crew of the Enterprise are saved from a giant explosion before dying heroically of radiation poisoning, he dies. He is then given a fittingly ceremonial space burial and lauded as a hero never to be forgotten. Particularly never to be forgotten as he comes back from the dead in the very next film. Because, as luck would have it, Spock's Katra, or living spirit, has been transferred into the body of a crewmate. Re-Spockification occurs when the Katra and the corpse are reunited in a funny procedure. Tremendous. Back to Earth now, and the vampire film series Blade. Now, the more pedantic listener will no doubt remember that I said I wouldn't include comic book films, but I'm including this one, so you'll just have to deal with it. I mean, it's not like Batman or Spider-Man or Iron Lung. It's just, I don't think of the Blade films as comic book adaptations. And anyway, the character I'm talking about isn't a superhero. He's Blade's right-hand man, stroke mentor, stroke assistant, stroke doctor, stroke father figure, Whistler, who, in the first Blade film, takes a lethal beating, then gets infected with vampirism, and chooses to shoot himself to death rather than become a vampire. But in Blade 2, he's back. Supposedly, before he had time to shoot himself properly, he was kidnapped by some other vampires and taken to the Czech Republic. Happens all the time, I'm sure. And finally, I've saved the best until last. Well, best in sort of quotation marks. In the 1986 cult classic sci-fi action-adventure thing Highlander, the world's least convincing Scotsman, Conor McLeod, as played by Christopher Lambert, is mentored by the world's least convincing Egyptian, Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, as played by Sean Connery. Juan explains to Conor that he needs to avoid having his head chopped off or he'll die. Juan then has his head chopped off and dies. There's no ambiguity here. His head flies off, he's proper dead. Only he's not, apparently. In Highlander 2, he's back, and he's an alien from the planet Zeist, which he forgot to mention the first time. He's also a magician, and he's summoned back to existence by Conor McLeod, who gains magical powers called the Quickening after killing 2 ludicrous space assassins. But don't worry, he dies again pretty quickly, living just long enough for Sean Connery to pick up a nice big check. So that's that. Of course, in Hammer terms, we've also got some miraculous resurrections yet to come. I mean, last time we saw Count Dracula, he resembled the contents of a Hoover bag, but it won't stop him coming back. 7 more times.
You're all feeling a bit silly now, aren't you? Well, silly and also incredibly well informed after that. Fabulous stuff, Mr. T. As we trundle down these halls of the glorious House of Hammer, it's sometimes easy to forget the myriad of wonderful and talented people we've been lucky enough to come across since we started back in May of 2021. But this is why it's such a good idea that we have our Hammer Hero Wall. Was it a wall? Or was it a corridor? Or was it a room? Either way, whether that's down to some terrible forgetfulness on your host's part or not, we have another addition to our Hammer Heroes, and this one is a biggie. And I can think of no one better to present such a big one than my friend and yours, Mr. Kev Moore.
Mario Zampi was a moderately successful film director and producer. Not so much in his native Italy, he found more success in the British film industry. As he was carving out a name for himself, Hammer were naturally keen to work with him on their upcoming Dick Barton Strikes Back, which would be the most ambitious film in the Unintentional trilogy. Zampi had a similar way of working to Hammer films. He had his own team of key players he'd employ repeatedly, and when he started to work on this new Barton adventure, he naturally brought them along. Things didn't go as smoothly as anticipated, and very early into this, Zampi bailed out and left somebody from his team behind who figured he'd stick around because the money was slightly better at Hammer. That man was one James Henry Kinmel Sangster. Jimmy for short. Born on Friday, December the 2nd, 1927 in Kinmel Bay, North Wales, Jimmy's formative years and education was spent at Llandaff Cathedral School in Cardiff before moving to Ewell Castle School in Surrey, where his love of movies became all-consuming, eventually leading to his dream job as a film projectionist for Norman's Film Services of Wardour Street, London. This job was very short-lived though, when he was sacked within a week for nearly destroying a film. He then began his film career in earnest as a gopher and clapper boy at the age of 16. After 2 years' national service in post-war India with the RAF got in the way, he got a job at Ealing Studios, and then Mario Zampi Productions. After he found himself high and dry in Cushing with Hammer as the uncredited second assistant director on Dick Barton Strikes Back, he decided to see it through to the end. After that, he was well and truly one of the family and went on to become Britain's youngest assistant director at the age of 21. He held this position on practically every film from 1949 until his emigration to Canada in 1952 with Hammer hairstylist Monica Hustler, his first of 3 wives. His new career in this new country was selling insurance, so it's no surprise that it wasn't long before he was back at his old job at Hammer. That didn't last long either, as he was promoted to production manager, which can be one of the most demanding jobs on a film set. We're more used to Jimmy Sangster as a writer now. After all, he's more than a little responsible for lighting the blue touch paper on the whole gothic horror cycle that changed the fortunes of the whole studio in what now seems like the blink of an eye. It wasn't, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not hard to perceive this change as an overnight sensation. The writing career started very humbly when he was production manager on The Stranger Came Home. When Anthony Hines saw his first screenplay called The Camera, Hines tactfully declined to put the camera in front of one. This didn't stop Sangster from picking up the pen again, and he continued to work on scriptwriting whilst on the job. The Hammer short, A Man on the Beach, would be his first produced screenplay. The timing of this was very fortunate for the producers, Tony Hines and Michael Carreras, because after the runaway success of the Quatermass experiment, they needed to strike while the iron was hot, and Jimmy could be just the man for the job.
We couldn't do a Quatermass, so we were sitting around, Michael and I were sitting around the office one day, and I said, well, how about a story where the monster, instead of coming from outer space, he comes from the centre of the earth? And Tony said, yeah, oh yeah, and then so-and-so, and then Michael said, yeah, so-and-so, and I said so. And within 20 minutes, we'd worked out the bare bones of a story. And Tony said to me, well, go away and write it. I said, I'm not going to write, I'm not a writer, I'm a production manager. They said, well, I was paying you as a production manager, go away and write it. If we like the script, we'll pay you for that too. So I went away, I wrote it, they liked it, they paid me 450 quid actually. And suddenly I was a writer.
What followed was X the Unknown, that despite some of its obvious problems, was well enough received to change his path. Sangster often said it would take him years to write for women, and even then he wasn't convinced he'd got it. It didn't stop him though, and for the next 14 years he would go on to write some of Hammer's biggest hits, as well as move to being producer and director in his own right. His working knowledge of how to make a film was second to none, and this nuts and bolts view meant that he could knock out a workable script very quickly, which stood him in good stead with the higher-ups when it came to cashing in on earlier successes.
That was James Carreras, Sir James Carreras, had this poster drawn up, most revolting poster you've ever seen, and took it to America and said, that's our next movie. And everybody fell over themselves to put money into it. And he came back to me and said, that's our next movie. I got really off that he hadn't asked me to write it. I said, oh, okay, well done. He said, well, no, you've got to go away and write it now. I said, what do you mean? He said, we start shooting in 6 weeks. I said, but hell, I killed Frankenstein off last time. He said, oh, well, you'll think of something. So I wrote The Revenge of.
It wasn't all sunshine and roses from then on. After his initial scripts for X the Unknown and Curse of Frankenstein, he was finding it hard to make ends meet and was turning to scripting for TV and other film companies. One of these pieces of work is the notoriously awful Trollenberg Terror, starring a man well known here at the House of Hammer, Forrest Tucker. Michael Carreras gave Jimmy a choice: be a writer or a production manager. Ever the pragmatist, he chose to be a production manager over his love of writing for the simple fact he'd started a family and the bills needed to be paid. Carreras responded by firing him as production manager and hired him as a writer with a £750 contract for at least one film a year. All in all, Jimmy scripted 20 Hammer films ranging from Dracula to The Nanny, Taste of Fear to The Devil Ship Pirates. He once stated that if Hammer started doing comedies, he'd be writing carry-on films for a living. It seems his on-the-job learning had served him well. He knew what made the company tick and how they could get the job done as quickly and, more importantly, as cheaply as possible. And this saw him, quite rightly, as one of the company's finest assets through the 60s. As the 70s rolled in, so did the new opportunities, which finally saw Jimmy Sangster's move to Hollywood for 15 years or so. The money was better, and this saw him wear many different types of writing hats on films like Whoever Slew Auntie Roo, The Legacy, and Phobia, as well as episodes for TV shows such as Cannon, Kolchak the Night Stalker, and Wonder Woman. All while being the author of detective fiction. He wrote a total of 8 novels, the non-fiction memoir Do You Want It Good or Tuesday, and the 2003 manual, Screenwriting Techniques for Success. Even after his return to Britain, he retained his house in LA because he would go where they'd pay him. A self-effacing man with an undoubtable prolific talent for bashing out a quick script, Sangster's many years in the business saw him become a much-respected screenwriter, and his vast body of work continues to be enjoyed to this day. He'd been supposedly retired for over 2 decades when he passed away at his Kensington home on Friday the 19th of August 2011. But he'd never stopped giving the interviews, the guest appearances, or the DVD commentaries. It's clear to see he was at heart still the same movie lover who'd written letters to Hollywood stars as a small boy. He was 83 and survived by his third wife, the actress Mary Peach, his 2 sons, and his 2 grandchildren.
I'm just a huge film fan. I always wanted to be in the film business. Always.
Now that, my friends, is a Hammer hero, and so is Jimmy Sangster. Just kidding. Welcome, Mr. Sangster. You are indeed a huge Hammer hero, and well done, Kevy. Excellent stuff. Well, I think now that we've got the technicalities and a figure behind the film covered, how about we talk about the Revenge of Frankenstein itself?
In the year 1860, I, Baron Frankenstein, was sentenced to death on the guillotine. Why? Why had the world condemned me? Because I was the first man to create another living being.
The Revenge of Frankenstein finds us back with the amazing Peter Cushing, this time adopting the fiendishly cunning moniker of Dr Stein, to fool all the natives that he is in no way the same mad we met in the first Frankenstein movie.
Gentlemen, I deny it absolutely.
You deny your name is Frankenstein?
Have you ever consulted a street directory, sir? Any street directory for any town in Central Europe. You will find dozens of Frankenstein. I am a Frankenstein. Of course, I'd heard of Baron Frankenstein, who created that monster some 3 years ago, but naturally I didn't wish to set up in practice here, handicapped by such a name, and so I changed it.
But the resemblance, the uncanny resemblance.
This is a monstrous accusation, inspired by jealousy.
Baron Frankenstein.
Dr. Stein.
Oh, of course, old Frankie here has not learned his lesson. Or rather, has he learned even more on how to make his creation even better this time around?
You know that Frankenstein was condemned to death?
Yes.
Do you know what for?
Well, surely everyone knows. The story's become a legend. He created a man who became a monster.
It should have been perfect. I made it to be perfect. If the brain hadn't been damaged, my work would have been hailed as the greatest scientific achievement of all time. Frankenstein would have been accepted as a genius of science. Instead, he was sent to the guillotine. I swore I would have my revenge. They will never be rid of me.
But the course of dismemberment, brain surgery, and remembering you have a fake name never runs smoothly. We go on now to the round table, where I am joined, as always, by Kev and Ben.
So, gentlemen, here we are with Hammer's first gothic horror sequel, The Revenge of Frankenstein. Now, let's start at the beginning. It's a good place to start. What do you think of the transition between the 2 films? Kev, I'm going to go to you first.
I'm glad you did, because for me it's quite interesting, because you've got the same priest who then gets killed, but it must have been a hell of a long walk, because between the end of The Curse of Frankenstein and this, you've got Dr. F's beard that has come on quite considerably, and Carl's developed a limp.
Stress beard,
yeah, definitely. And Carl's developed a limp and a hump on the way over. So, wow, what a walk!
I've got no issues with it. I mean, continuity aside, it's
what continuity?
Well, all right. Well, all right. Continuity issues aside, no, it's a great way to start the film. You know, especially with the crawl we get again, like we did at the start of the first Frankenstein. That's a really nice mirror. Getting the sight of the guillotine. That's a really cool way to start as well. And then the dead man walking wonderful. I mean, what's the word? If you sort of think of the behind the scenes thing of them sort of going, this was really successful, so we're going to do another Frankenstein film. It's like, but he's dead. Is he? We didn't see him die. Right, make it up now. How did he survive? And it's like, that's what, you can see it on screen. That's what they did. They sort of went, this is how he got away with it.
I liked the fact that it picked up immediately after as well. I think if you going to retrofit a character being undead into it, then I think explaining how the death didn't occur is a wise thing. I like the fact that Hammer had such faith in the audience's faith in the film, that they felt the need to A, pick it up immediately there, but B, that they went for continuity at all. Because obviously by this point, Universal had gone down several Dracula and Frankenstein's monsters routes that were no longer sequential. They were just installments of, here's another thing. And I think that I would give them credit for that. However, I am gonna hold on to a little bit of criticism that I'll come back to later about the same point as well. So that leads me on. So we've obviously talked about the introduction to the film, but I'm going to ask you a really open question now. I'll start with you, Smokey. As a sequel, do you think this film is a success by the parameters of a sequel?
I was thinking about this earlier when I was watching it again, and so if you sort of talk about the broad terms of what a sequel should be, it should be more, shouldn't it? I mean, that's your kind of definition of
common understanding. Yeah,
you ramp it up. You go from bog standard Arnold Schwarzenegger to a liquid Terminator. You go from one alien to a whole planet full of aliens. You know what I mean? So I don't know why I went Jim Cameron crazy there, but I did. Anyway, so that's what you do. You up it. Now, take the scene where Frankenstein is showing, the eyes in the box and the hand in the box. That's upping it. That's upping your effects and how it looks in regards to the horror and what Frankenstein can do.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it comes to the monster and everything else, I don't think it goes far enough. I think it plays it actually pretty safe. And sadly, I also think that this is a rare misstep for Phil Leakey. I don't think the makeup is fantastic. However, I will say that the best makeup is actually for Frankenstein himself at the end, after he's had the crap kicked out of him. It's absolutely brilliant. So he does redeem himself.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah, so he does redeem himself. So, I mean, as you say, it's an open question, but yes and no.
Kev, would you like to add a touch of nuance to those polarities?
Okay, I'll go with the further yes and no then. As far as a sequel's concerned, I prefer sequels that make something of the original but then take it in a different direction. A bit like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, where Evil Dead 2 becomes a comedy. This is not a musical or a comedy, but I feel that they did need to move in a different direction, and it certainly works for me. The fact that you've actually got two monsters as well is quite a sneaky kind of nod. Right, this time we've upped it, we've got more monsters. Granted, one of them is just a sort of a side project, and it's like a spare part, if you like, just in case I get the crap kicked out of me. It's all right, I've built a new one. But as far as the story, there's some missteps in there, and you think, what are you doing? It all seems to be pussyfooting a bit. There's not a lot goes on for a lot of the film, and it's not really getting into the thick of it very fast. But saying that, you've got some lovely scenes as well, so it takes away with one hand and then gives you something else with the other. You've got stuff like the Lionel Jeffries and Michael Ripper scene, for instance, where they're both body snatchers drinking Tizer. Great little scene. Yeah.
I'll add something else to that, just a little bit. Is just picking up on what Kev said there. A problem is the repetition. It's like, how many medical board meetings do we see? How many times do we see the sneaky little bugger around the hospital ward spying on people? How many times do we see that? How many times do we see flashes of a monster lying down, or Carl lying down, or someone who's looking a bit dead but actually isn't? It's just, there's a lot of repetition here. And as Kev says, there's parts of it where just nothing really happens at all, and that drags it down a little bit, especially for an hour and a half runtime.
And I'm quite relieved to hear that you're both not sitting there telling me this is the greatest film of all time, because I was quite worried I was steaming in as the resident joyless wonder one more time. But because to me, I've got issues with this film.
Yeah.
You know, and we can talk about how it looks in the cast in a little while, because there are plenty of redeeming features as well.
There are.
But you know, the issue with the sequel is it's a well-trodden path that many sequels have been down since. Is that Frankenstein achieves his aims in this? He makes his monster, and it's perfect, like he said it was going to be, and that's boring. The whole point is, in the first film, the interest comes in the fact that Frankenstein fails, and the horror is created out of this monstrosity that comes about because he isn't able to do what he said he was going to. That's one of my issues. My other issue is the film is called The Revenge of Frankenstein. I'm not entirely sure what Frankenstein's revenge was meant to be.
No.
If it's certainly not anything that fits the definition of the word revenge in my sense. And the third, and perhaps most important criticism is that I would go one further than I think what you said, Smokey, of saying that the monster is, you know, pretty lame. There is no monster. There is only Carl, and he is not a monster. Yes, albeit he's monstrous in terms of sort of sort of a crime against
some of his actions as well.
God or whatever. Yeah, well, he just turned into a cannibal, but we'll get back to that in a bit. But all I mean is, he's not. Unlike the poster would have you believe, he is not green, and he is not, and he is not scary. He is just a funny man, and this. It becomes abundantly obvious in the film that you're kind of waiting for this monster-shaped hole to be filled. And ironically, as Kev said, for a film, I think, that has two monsters, or was it you, Smokey? I apologise. Whoever said the film has two monsters, it doesn't really have any monsters in terms of what the audience might expect. But let me sort of lead on to another question, and Smokey, I'll go to you. The problem for me is I don't know who I'm rooting for here. Who did you feel you were rooting for in this film?
I felt like a very passive viewer. I wasn't really rooting for anyone.
No, me neither.
I mean, you have obviously Frankenstein, or Dr Stein, which is almost Alucard level of stupidity. And then let's not get on to the end when he's Dr. Frank, and it's like, oh come on, are you just going to be Dr. next time? So no, I didn't care about anyone here. I mean, you have Frankenstein, and you have his doctor friend. His motivations, you never really find out why he wants to help Frankenstein at all.
Personal gain, I think.
I think so, but I don't care about any of these people, and I didn't care whether they lived or died. But something I will say though is, something I'm very proud of us, gentlemen, is that we said that about the opening, and we said about a few of our issues. None of us said this could have all been solved if we'd had Christopher Lee, which I think I've seen some reviews online, and I think that's a really lazy solution to what this film's issues are. I don't think he would have made much of a difference.
Yeah, because it's not his character that the film lacks. What the character the film lacks is Paul from The Curse of Frankenstein, because Paul is an innocent...
He's us.
But he's us, yeah. We play the part of him watching the horror unfold in front of us. Here, as you quite rightly say, Smokey, we don't have that. We're not bothered about Hans's motivations, because he's more than happy to know what Frankenstein is and does and be part of it. I'm not really bothered about Carl, because I don't know who he is, and the fact he's willing to have his brain put in a monster body, then fine, he's not got my sympathy. The character of Margaret isn't fleshed out enough. The medical counsel are unlikable. We'll get on to Bert from Mary Poppins in a little while. But Kev, what did you think in terms of people to root for?
As far as rooting for people, the only character I did root for is Carl, because I felt like he had the most interesting trajectory, because he starts off and he's just this limping weirdo at the gallows, and by the end of it, he's gone right across. He's become this giant man, and there's some lovely scenes as well. Michael Gwynn, when he's actually adopting Carl's persona, if you like, and you can see that he suddenly realises, hang on a second, I'm no longer that small man. I am a very big, powerful man. I can overpower this guy so easily, and he does, and he just turns it on its head. So, yeah, and there's that lovely piece where he actually looks into the mirror, and you can see the enormity of his commitment taking place, and I always think, how weird would that be if you woke up one day and your face was completely different? Francis Matthews' hands, is definitely the opposite of Paul as far as his motivations, because Paul were a big wet blanket, but here, this guy's just like a real cheerleader, and you can tell that he's in it because he's after the fame and the money and the knowledge. And don't forget, he's got more of a knowledge out of this than Frankenstein himself, because he actually surpasses Frankenstein and actually creates a living being out of the bits of Frankenstein afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important as well, Kev, just to underline that point there. This film isn't about the creation of a monster. It's more about the sort of transference of life, isn't it, really? So it's a slightly different aim as well.
And I like the fact that they still managed to use Hans as the Doctor Who companion kind of thing, where everything's still explained to him. So you still got your proxy in there as an audience.
Yeah, Mr. Exposition.
Yeah.
I mean, continue on a bit, Kevin. I mean, is there any one member of the cast who you'd give? I think possibly apart from Peter Cushing, because I think he is outstanding. But if you want to wax lyrical about it, I'm not going to stop you. But is there anybody you'd single out as wanting to talk about their performance in this film?
Michael Gwynn, obviously, because you can tell that he's really watched. I can't remember the other guy's name. The original Carl, if you like. He's absolutely mirrored his performance, and he does it on such a scale, and it's almost, we were saying about Christopher Lee, it's almost that kind of level of mime where he's able to make his body contort, because at one point towards the end, no spoilers here, honest, but he actually contorts his shoulders, and you actually see him grow a hump just by the way he actually moves his body. Yeah, it's fantastic. So yeah, Michael Gwynn, who I'd only seen as the Lord from Fawlty Towers.
Oh yeah, I would have to give special mention to Marjorie Gresley though, who plays the Countess at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
in Frankenstein's practice, and she just comes in as this energy bomb of she's right and everyone else is wrong, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But if you'll indulge me a little Hammer watch, like we normally do.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to be on the
Here we go.
so to speak.
Of course. But this is the reason I'm going to bring these few up, because there are quite a lot of Hammer alumni in this cast.
Even I spotted them.
Yeah. But there's a few that have only done one appearance so far. And there's quite a few. So Eunice Gayson, who plays Margaret, we have only seen her once before, as I say, and that was in To Have and To Hold. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah, she plays the surprise daughter, doesn't she, in To Have and To Hold?
That's right, yeah. Michael Gwynn, we've seen very recently. He was in the camp on Blood Island. He was one of the emaciated soldiers. Lionel Jeffries, of course, we've seen. He was in Quatermass. But then John Welsh, who plays Bergman, he breaks the mould a little here. We've seen him twice in two very innocuous roles. But when I say the films, you'll probably remember him. He was in Women Without Men, and he was also in Mask of Dust as well. And now, as soon as I say that, I can picture him in both of those films as well. So yeah, so no, but if you go through the cast, there are many others who have been in Hammer films before. But that concludes this episode's Hammer Watch.
There's Richard Bursworth as well, who for once actually survives to the end of the film.
He does, yeah. As we've said, he's had a rough ride over Quatermass and Camp on Blood Island. He didn't meet a very nice end in either of those films, but no, he survives in this one.
Yeah.
And playing a very different type of character. I really like him in this. As I said, he's Bert, the chimney sweep from Mary Poppins. I'll have no one tell me otherwise. But I was sort of watching something that says he has, over the years, been accused of overacting somewhat in this film. But I thought he was great. Really added the sort of caricature balance to sort of the horror that was going on. I mean, because this film does have its comedic moments, and he was a continued sort of I don't know what you said, like a barometer of the film, because he's quite sinister and creepy himself, but he's also quite funny.
I mean it's a hammy performance, but
it's great.
It fits well with it. So I had no issues with what he did, and it was entertaining whenever he was on screen. So
I mean, in many ways, it's a Mary Poppins prequel, because he simply took his sweeping brush and went up a chimney with it. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've got Eunice Gayson for this last role with Hammer as well, because in a couple of years she ends up being James Bond's girlfriend for a couple of films. Sylvia Trench.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was originally supposed to be Miss Moneypenny.
Oh, well, but then, of course, we've already had Miss Moneypenny and several Hammers before, haven't we? So.
They switched roles because Lois Maxwell saw the script and didn't fancy the lewdness of it, so she was given Miss Moneypenny, and they switched roles.
Well,
amazing.
You know, maybe this is a thing going forward. The HCU crosses with the Bond universe. Who knows?
There's been plenty of them.
Eunice Gayson must have been slightly sore about it, for, sort of missing out on 18 films or whatever it was.
Do you know what, though, he's saying that? I kind of miss Lois Maxwell from the Hammer films. We had her for a couple.
Yeah.
Shame she never came back.
Right, the look of this film, is it's one thing I can't criticise. I think the film looks amazing, even after all these years. I think it's another perfect example of how Hammer have made the most of the limited space and money that they had to produce this. And it even if I've got criticisms of the film, it's in terms of the narrative, I've got no criticisms of how it looks. I think it leaps off the screen still.
Absolutely, yeah. The colour scheme's brilliant. The contrast they have between his practice and then his other practice for the poor, or whatever
the poor hospital.
The poor hospital. That's brilliant. I mean, it's lovely and opulent, and then awful and drab, isn't it? And where we get 1,500 reminders that these guys just don't like to use soap. How many times do they say these people don't wash in this film?
Dirt as a level keeps you warm.
Well, apparently. But yeah, they like to remind us of that a lot.
I like the fact that they've actually gone a bit further with this as well, because you've got so many sets, so many different sets. For instance, there's the bit where Michael Gwynn's running around looking like he needs to have some meat soon, so he goes for the young girlie. You realise that that's actually a 3-level set, and there's no reason for it to be that at all. They could have just had a street corner, but no, they've gone for this spectacular 3-level set that they only used twice in the show, in the whole film. I only know that because I spotted that yellow bin twice. I'm just like, why is
bin
that
watch.
there? Why is that yellow waste paper basket in the middle of the set? I don't know. But like you said,
authenticity.
And of course you've got alleyway shots and stuff, and you think you'd see these maybe once or twice in the whole film, and they've really gone to town on it.
There's one of my favourite sort of uses of matte scenery here is there's a scene where I think it's somebody, I think it's Carl actually going down a set of steps, and if you look, he's walking down a set of steps into a matte background, and then the camera changes and he appears to be having walked out of a matte background to get down the steps. I mean, they're perfect, they're brilliant, but it's just when you pay close attention, you think, yes, I can understand there might have been interesting logistics filming that particular scene, but. Kev, something you said there reminded me of another point I wanted to pick up on, because I think that we've the three of us, to a lesser or greater degree, have maybe picked up on one of the criticisms we got is that there isn't enough horror in this. The horror is implied, and it's the horror is there within the actions of Dr. Frankenstein. And all right, there is a couple of scenes of brains plopping into jars, which are all a bit tame by current standards, not so much in 1958, but. I think that story about cannibalism, because obviously what we see is Carl descend, having had it when he gets knocked around a bit and his brain gets damaged, just like Otto the monkey's brain got damaged. They both descend into cannibalism, which is a bit of a stretch, but I can go with it. But I think they were obviously restricted with where they could really go in that, because I think, on having watched it a few times, quite as rightly as you say, Carl gets a bit hungry and he has a snack on one of the young courting couple who are sat in the garden. But I really don't think that's obvious on the first or second viewing, because he just seems to sort of cuddle her for a bit and run off. And I think the implication is that he's tried to eat her, or has eaten a bit of her. But again, obviously they had to steer well clear of that, which I think is a little bit of a problem.
The thing I thought on initial viewing was, the bit at the beginning with the grave robbers, and one of them gets frightened to death, has a heart attack and falls in the grave.
I've got notes on that. We're coming back.
I'm sure you do. But I on initial viewing of watching this, I thought that was what the same thing had happened to the girl. And it wasn't until, and as you say, you watch it again, you go, oh, right, they're trying to put forward the idea that he's actually taken a massive chomp out of her somewhere along the line, but it's not massively clear.
I liked how they were subtle about it as well, because they don't show the girl being savage. You know, you don't see the rotting corpse or anything like that, and they do the same. I know they do the same later as well when they open up the grave of Baron Frankenstein to find out what's in it, and you don't see a beheaded priest. You just see rosary in a book, and that's it.
But 3 years later, he's dissolved.
Yeah, true.
Is that what we do?
That's what priests do.
No, finding priests in a grave is bad luck. It made Michael Ripper do a runner.
Okay, while we're on the subject, would you like to share your notes on this particular scene?
The appalling continuity, right? Lionel Jeffries.
Oh, no.
We're more on the continuity.
Honestly, Lionel Jeffries is startled by the appearance of Baron Frank or Stein or
Dr.
Frankenstein. Yeah. And is suddenly teleported from one end of the grave to the other to fall in. If you look...
Fright will do to you.
Yeah,
he was scared. He jumped.
Yeah, he jumped 6 feet and then fell back.
Kev, it's called a jump scare for a reason.
But also, they never say what they've done with the body. I mean, are we just to assume that they put the grave back in on top of him because he just disappears, doesn't he, as a character? You know?
Yeah, he's working class, isn't he? So they've just been buried under the priest. Yeah,
under the priest. Yeah. No one dug down to peasant level when they were exhuming.
Why would you?
Exhuming the grave later on. Are there any other major factors such as this that we need to bring to the fore before we start wrapping up?
I feel like Eunice Gayson as Margaret is unfairly criticised as a non-character because she's the pivot. She's the one thing that changes the whole trajectory of the plot, because she's the one that lets Michael Gwynn out. Without her actually being the liberal bleeding lefty and going in there and just going, oh, I'll help you, without knowing what she's letting loose, which is ridiculous. I mean, why would you do that?
Yeah, but the conceit works well.
Absolutely,
because she got put into that position because her dad was a high flyer. He was like a commissioner or something. She says, "Oh, he's gotten me this job. You have to take me on," kind of thing. And she wasn't. You know, it's the film cliche of that, isn't it? They aren't prepared for the real world.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you, Kev. I think she's quite unfairly maligned. I thought she did well with what she was given, and I do love the scene when she first comes to visit Dr. Stein and he's not there, and so she gets ushered in to meet what's his name, Hans, and she is followed by every able-bodied invalid just staring in the windows at the pretty girl. I thought that was hilarious.
See, I've got to disagree. I think that she's utterly disposable as a character, and it's no reflection, on the actress. It's just you could have him say, after he's had his conversation with Hans about the fact that he's going to become a medical wonder, you could just have him sort of becoming enraged in his giant body and breaking the straps. I mean, the problem is that she has nothing to do apart from dither about, handing out tobacco and writing paper to illiterates. Yeah. There is the hint early on of a love triangle, which is actually is a very similar plot that appears in one of the Universal Frankenstein sequels. I think it's House of Frankenstein. That you're going to have a love triangle between Carl and Hans and Margaret, and it's hinted at in one scene, and that would have really fleshed out her role in sort of giving her more to do. But as it is, she just the character disappears into nothing. So I'm afraid I do disagree with you, and I do agree with the criticism of her role. I take the point, though, that in the story as it's written, it is the pivotal point that she is the sort of the weak woman. I apologise for using that particular phrase, but who has sympathy with him and loosens his straps and doesn't know what she's unleashing. But I could have written that 10 different ways and it wouldn't have mattered.
I think we really can't close this conversation without talking about Otto the Cannibal Monkey, who has the best lines ever when Dr. Frankenstein, I'm still going to call him Frankenstein, I don't care, but
well, then you're part of the problem.
He actually retorts to a question when Hans says he ate another monkey, and he says, what else would he be married to? I think that's fantastic.
But
I love that line.
Married?
Yeah.
Married? Has anyone here been to a monkey wedding? Because I haven't. I'd love to, though. Wouldn't that be great?
Monkey wedding on skates.
It's a beautiful, beautiful line. Yeah. Who else would he be married to? It's just
Absolutely.
it's so incredulous. I love it.
Although he would have been married to Peter Cushing given half the chance. So there's always that.
Wouldn't we all?
Oh, yeah, true.
Apparently they got on rather well.
Yeah, there's photos of them riding around the backlot on bikes together holding hands, which is crazy.
like a PG Tips advert.
Yeah. Ironically, I've got an extra then. I can go extra with that then. The trainer of the monkey, well, the chimp, also trained the chimps for the PG Tips adverts.
Full
circle.
All comes back to Hammer.
Okay, so I think the time has come to a little sum up and a rating out of 10. Smokey, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I think we've actually gone through this really well. This isn't one of those kind of like we said with about Camp on Blood Island that we could go on for a lot longer than we actually did for the roundtable. I think we've covered this really well. There's not much more I have to say about it. I was a little disappointed in this because I really enjoyed The Curse of Frankenstein, and this one there are good bits in it. There are. I just think maybe, as we sort of said at the beginning, maybe it's a little telling that they sort of went, right, you've got a couple of weeks to come up with how Frankenstein is actually alive. Go away and do it. And it kind of feels like the whole film is like that. Feels a little rushed. Cushing is electric. I've just got to say, I mean, it doesn't matter if we spoil this, but when he is once again brought back from the dead, in the coda of the film, I mean, that just made me have a big, massive smile on my face.
Yeah.
And when he appears and he's so suave and he puts his monocle in and, nice to see you,
brilliant.
you're back again. Yeah, Dr. Frank. And it was just all like, that's brilliant.
The thing that gives it away as well is the little lapel flower business, the whole buttonhole thing, when he puts his buttonhole in before his monocle. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So there are good bits to this. It's a little too long. I think it could do with being a little shorter. So it's just been bugging me all day. It's between a 6 and a 7. I'll give it a 7, but it's a low 7. It's just tipping the scales. It's not terrible by any stretch, and I'd happily watch it again, but it's not up there with some of Hammer's best.
What about you, Kev?
Right, are you ready?
I am now.
Strap yourself in. On the plus note, you actually see him doctoring, which is the first for Dr. Frankenstein. You'd see George Woodbridge, who we've seen in the last couple of films, playing a drunk Lance uppercut, which is always good to see. There's some bloody great bottle throwing going on in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Some amazing...
Did you not wince at the loss of booze, Kev? I thought of you as I saw
honestly,
it.
I was weeping a little bit, but I was like, nice shot, though. Go on, respect you. Minus, there's no heaving bosom in it at all, which I kind of missing it. I'm sorry, but if it's a gothic,
kind of missing it.
I need to be accustomed to these things now. But there's lots of questions as well, like whatever happened to poor sickly Vera in her bloomers? In fact, what happened to Margaret? The last time we see either of these two is at the party when they look a bit shocked by Mr. Wibble coming back through the window. Then there's why did they keep Carl's body so close to the furnace? Because that's not a great place to store a body. Everybody else is stacked up in a tank except Carl's body, sat next to fire. Whatever happened to the cannibal chimp Otto? We never get... I'd love to see what happened to him. His continuing adventures would have been fantastic. What was outside Frankenstein's lab that made all the windows glow green all day long? They're all over the place. All through the film, every time you're in his lab, all the windows are glowing green for some bizarre reason. And despite it being a direct sequel and having Hereford, James and George Baxt do a pump up on all the dialogue and sprinkle some comedy in, it still feels, like Ben said, it still feels like it's half finished. So for me, it's a 6 out of 10, and even then it's a high 6. It's just, well, and that's because of the bonus points.
What I would say is that when I die, I hope I do so ruining a pretentious musical evening.
Nice.
Just very much like Carl did. I was disappointed by this as well, I have to say, a little bit. And maybe it's an opportunity for me to try and check my expectations with films as we go on, because I don't know how much of my disappointment is down to the film legitimately not being as good as it could be, or not being as good as I hoped it would be.
That's a good point.
So I guess I've got to think about that as we continue our odyssey, throughout. But I am that said, as we all do, I'm going to look at these things objectively, and one thing I'm not going to do is artificially inflate what I think of them, just simply because I know there is a rabid fan base out there that will tell me I'm wrong. Hopefully, some of which are hopefully listening to us right now. But yeah, I just can't help thinking there's 1,000 different sequels you could have written to The Curse of Frankenstein, and this isn't necessarily one of the better ones.
We've got 1,000 of them coming up.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe the other 5 will be better. And I do really like the way this film ends. I think the very end scene is arguably the strongest part, because the irony of Frankenstein having become the monster is not lost on me. Of course, they're not lost on anybody. But yes, I'm going to give it a 6 as well. So, and on that note, I think it's time that we all left and found a monkey wedding to attend.
There we go. The Revenge of Frankenstein, and it's... Hang on. Can you hear that? What is that? I know what that is. It's reviews time.
Motion Picture Daily noted, a horror picture turned out with creative skill and imagination. The most notable contribution the Hammers have made to the genre is their stunning use of colour for frightening effects.
Hammer Films have demolished once and for all the theory that horror films should always be in black and white. Harrison's reports declared it a first-rate picture of its kind.
The monthly film bulletin was negative, writing, a contrived plot and a notable lack of pace and imagination are responsible for the failure of this lavish and painstaking production to be convincing even on the level of a horror film. Peter Cushing's stylish and diffident performance serves only to underline the farcical effects of a crude and pedestrian handling of the legitimate horror left.
The Evening Standard, on August the 28th, said, the latest monster looks like a handsome front row forward recovering from a head injury.
The News Chronicle of August the 29th said, I relish shockers like this.
The Observer on the 31st of August says, a vulgar, stupid, nasty, and intolerably tedious business.
And The Spectator on September the 5th said, the lowest level to which we are obliged to crawl.
The Daily Cinema from August the 27th called it a handsome deluxe production.
The Kinematograph Weekly on August the 28th says, immaculately tailored, gripping, and intriguing story, faultless atmosphere. Wow, there were some brutal ones there, weren't there? Do you agree with them, or do you agree with us? Let us know. All our contact stuff is in the old show notes. Before we leave, something occurred to me while we were viewing this. Frankenstein's monster is something of a feature of pop culture, isn't he? Hadn't thought about it before? Well, you're about to. Thinking back over the, by now, vast number of segments we've produced here at the House of Hammer, I'm trying to recall if we've ever said anything controversial. There might be the odd opinion thrown out here and there that people might not agree with, but on the whole, I think we're pretty uncontroversial. That may all be about to change. At time of recording, we're coming to the end of 2023, right? We're well on our way into the 21st century. We've evolved over the millennia, in some ways for the better, and in some ways for the worse. But I think, for the majority, we're enlightened beings. And you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you, yes you, that are listening to my voice right now, are pretty darn skippy too. I'm sure you're a lovely person. And if we ever do our mega-busting House of Hammer meetup in the future, I would like to shake you by the hand and talk about High Hazel for half an hour. Eh? With that in mind, now seems a good time to drop this thought bomb on you. I think it's about time we drop the whole correcting people when they say Frankenstein instead of Frankenstein's monster. Now, I know that saying Frankenstein's monster or the creature is correct. I get it, okay? I get it, you get it, we all get it. But, in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Also, not to be too nitpicky, but Dr. Frankenstein did create the creature. Some would say creation equals birth. So, being his progeny, doesn't that mean he would have his second name too? Ergo, the monster is a Frankenstein. I'm not trying to change anyone's minds here. You've got your thoughts on this, and so do I. But I will return to my statement I made just a moment ago. Does it really matter? Probably not. Anyway, with that off my chest, the reason I'm here this time. At the start of this episode, you may have caught a few bars of Alice Cooper's 90s rock anthem of Feed My Frankenstein. Hearing that song again not only made me want to rewatch Wayne's World, but it got me thinking about how Frankenstein really has been embedded in popular culture. For starters, that's not Alice's only stab at the legend. He also did it in 1986 with Teenage Frankenstein. This made my mind go back to childhood, and remembering being bought yogurts with weird, creepy creatures on the front. I had to look it up to make sure I wasn't imagining things, but lo and behold, fiendish feet yogurts. One with Our Mate Frankie, another with Dracula, and some kind of ghost and mummy too. Check them out if you don't believe me. Obviously, the amount of times Frankenstein and the monster have appeared in films is, well, monstrous. Of course, we have Hammer and Universal, those we know about. But there were silent versions made in 1910 and 1915. I Was a Teenage Frankenstein in 1957, the wonderfully titled Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter in 1966, and of course we can't not mention Mel Brooks's genius comedy Young Frankenstein in 1974. I had a cursory glance, and it is literally hundreds of times that the Doc and the monster have appeared on screen, from movies to TV to animation to music videos. Then, of course, the inspiration derived from the characters too, from Weird Science to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, from Metallica's Some Kind of Monster to the first verse in T'Pau's China in Your Hand. I know, that one surprised me too. Surely this proves that it doesn't really matter what name is placed on a certain character. I don't think I'm being too bold here when I say that even a person who has never seen a Frankenstein movie or read the novel could see the monster appear and know exactly what it is. Then, of course, that brings the parodies. Let's get Frankenhooker out of the way straight away. But think of the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, when the monster turns into John Lennon. For our American chums out there, you've got the teeth-rotting Frankenberry cereal to go with your Count Chocula. Wow, have you people never heard of Shreddies? Anyway, Tim Burton gave us two versions of Frankenweenie, when a young lad reanimates his pet dog. Let's hope there was no Curse of Frankenstein-style puppy drownings in that one. And then, of course, we will always have to mention the Munsters, if only for Fred Gwynne's lovely turn as Herman. I could go on. Trust me, I really could. There are hundreds of more examples of these out there, but let's just enjoy them, shall we? Let's not get hung up on names and such like.
Frankenstein was the creator, not the monster. It's a common misconception held by all truly stupid people.
Uh-oh. Well, there we are, my friends. We're at the end of another episode, and, coincidentally, our penultimate episode of the year, before we take a little break until the new year. Our final episode of 2023 will see us tackling another double bill of comedy. Comedy! Hurrah! So, keep your eyes out for that one in a fortnight's time. Until then, don't forget, the most annoying season of the year is coming up. So if you want to truly spoil someone, you can buy them some of our merch, or you can buy them a Patreon subscription. Either or is fine with us. Check those show notes again for details. So, until next time when we truly go up the creek.
From me, Kev Moore.
From me, Ben Tillison.
And from Ingrid, and myself, Smokey, we hope you lovely lot take care of yourselves until we see you back through the doors here at the House of Hammer.
Did Otto eat flesh before you operated?
No, I discovered it soon after the operation. He ate his wife.
That's another monkey.
What else would he be married to?